Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, currently on special leave of absence, continued to defend his decision to disband the political killings task team. He told the committee the move was based on several considerations, with the primary concern being the overall SAPS budget and the financial constraints facing the police service. Criminologist Professor Kholofelo Rakubu joins us now for more. Prof Rakubu, thank you so much for your time. Good evening. Perhaps let's start here.
Good evening.
The minister's initial answers as to why he had disbanded the political killings task team was that it was an unnecessary concentration of resources on a task team with a narrow focus, and therefore the resources would be best used more generally across other SAPS units. Secondly, that he felt that the political killings task team was no longer necessary at the time, and then he then said that at some point that the political killings task team was spending too much money. He then was asked about having any line of sight over the finances of the political killings task team, and it became quite clear and apparent that he made the decision in the absence of an expenditure report or any detailed financial statement of the political killings task team. Do you think that reconciles well with the decision he ultimately made and what the reasons he based it on?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. It doesn't. It is a huge contradiction. Remember, he just is highly defensive and evasive in his responses. He took a decision without financial report that highlights on the expenditure of the PKTT. So clearly, he was not willing to even go into that greater detail to say, I did not specifically check on the finances, or there was no dedicated day to look into finances, as much as there was no dedicated day to look into the operations and to discuss decisions openly of the disbandment. So what I found is on his testimony today, it was a bit defensive and selectively assertive, because he constantly claimed authority over police decision and avoided accountability and contradicted himself on key areas, because he claimed authority versus avoiding responsibility, which is what I found as a contradiction, because he said he had the powers to disband, constantly reminded the committee that I had powers, yet he distanced himself from operational consequences and implying those were Masemola's domain. I could take operational decision, I could give a directive on operational decision, but I distance myself from operational consequences. And interestingly, there's also information around protecting whistleblowers, which he now says informed his decision not to communicate openly with General Masemola. He argued secrecy was necessary for safety, which is highly questionable in this regard, because he referenced grievances from the PKTT members, but did not provide specifications, documentation, chain of communication, or proof of communication that suggests there was such.
Yeah. Let's talk then about what seemed like a weird concession throughout the day, albeit not a new concession. The minister seems to have reaffirmed time after time that the political killings task team was effective, and that the next natural step was in fact to expand it into a national unit and not just a provincial unit, except he decided to do the exact opposite, and that is not to expand it into a national unit, but to disband it altogether. Does that add up logically and coherently at all? Given if it was so effective, why then not follow the next natural step, which is to expand it into a national unit? What was your take on that particular dialectic?
It was a shocker, but it substantiated the decision to expand, because remember, he couldn't take South Africans through decisions why he had to expand. So for him to even confirm that this tax team was successful talks to the haphazardness around and hasty decisions around the PKTT. So it's going to be very difficult to prove that it was not politically motivated. And it also talks to the processes, lack of consultation, being informed by a 2019 work study, not having financials on board, claiming to have consulted the presidency, which is also something highly questionable. And I doubt he has done that, because the president could not have allowed that there be this extensive process when he has documents in place to prove that he was consulted and provided a go-ahead. And there's no way the president could have been consulted and the national commissioner not thoroughly consulted. So you wonder, where did he go?
Just to that question, because there was a big discussion throughout the day around the role of the Interministerial Committee, which was established by the President and chaired by the Minister of Police. Minister Mchunu is under the impression that there was no Interministerial Committee in the 7th administration, despite the fact that this Interministerial Committee was established in the 5th administration and carried over into the 6th administration. And of course that the Interministerial Committee was sort of the representative political authority of the political killings task team, and that's where decisions of a policy and a nature were to be made entirely, because it would be representative of the president's political intervention there. What was your understanding around how the minister rationalized the role of the Interministerial task team, or the Interministerial Committee rather, and whether or not it still exists?
A confused explanation, if I were to put it that way. He didn't even see it fit that it be consulted. And I don't think he understood the Interministerial Committee's inclusion in the initial stage. Because now all powers lied on him. He's the authority. He misinterpreted his power. He did not see the necessity for interministerial. And there's no way you can avoid Interministerial Committee and consult the president and get a go-ahead from the president, who initially worked with the Interministerial Committee to take such a decision. So it will be important to go back to that committee to be advised. As in the beginning, there was an advice from that, but he showed lack of understanding. But because he constantly claimed authority, he then undermined all other external critical institutions like the interministerial committees. But then, because of his nature, it's difficult for him to even come back to reality. But all this, it will be very difficult not to see certain political interference or him being pushed or pressed for time, because we also question the directive timing versus operational awareness. It looked like he lacked operational awareness, because there seems to be a disconnect between decision making and execution. He cannot even explain the immediately part, because that immediately talks to execution. Now, as in today. But his interpretation is something else. And I strongly believe he had to come up with justification for disbandment after the directive to disband, when now he had of all this, because he came with a protective rationale. He claimed he withheld information, citing fear of retaliation and compromised investigation. But then the decision to disband now doesn't even talk to that explanation that is providing, that I had to protect whistleblowers. When you protect whistleblowers, you don't give a directive that has an immediate request.
I mean, this certainly will continue to form a part, I think, of the cross-questioning, which continues tomorrow from 11 o'clock. Prof Rakubu, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it.